is failing in this war.
The White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby will join us in a moment to discuss President Biden's assembly of the NATO alliance in Washington this week. President Biden had no campaign events scheduled today, but the speech to the NATO alliance once again demonstrated one of the advantages an incumbent president usually has in a re-election campaign, being able to get that presidential focus at a presidential event. House Democrats met this morning for what they called a listening session about the presidential campaign. Here is what the youngest member of Congress, who will be our first guest tonight, said after that meeting this morning.
After the meeting last night with the Congressional Black Caucus and after spending time on the phone with Anita Dunn and other campaign officials, I feel very reassured by the president's plan. There's been this narrative that since the debate, he has not been out. He's been out. The videos I've seen of people out campaigning has been Joe Biden. On the other hand, I've seen Donald Trump on his ass riding around a golf cart disrespecting people. So I feel reassured about the campaign's plan. They're spending $50 million in the battleground states on ads, and he's going to be on the road talking about Project 2025 and the things people care about.
Since FDR in the 1930s, the three-letter designation of a political player has always referred to presidents. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, JFK, LBJ. There is only one member of the House of Representatives in history who has been identified in the three-letter style normally reserved for presidents. Here is what AOC had to say about President Biden's re-election campaign.
I've spoken with him extensively. He made clear then, and he has made clear since, that he is in this race. The matter is closed. He had reiterated that this morning. He has reiterated that to the public. Joe Biden is our nominee. He is not leaving this race. He is in this race, and I support him. Now, what I think is critically important right now is that we focus on what it takes to win in November, because he is running against Donald Trump, who is a man with 34 felony convictions that has committed 34 felony crimes, and not a single Republican has asked for Donald Trump to not be the nominee. I'm here to win on this democracy. I'm here to win in November.
After Senate Democrats had a luncheon discussion about the presidential campaign, Democratic Majority Leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, said this.
Are you confident that President Biden has what it takes to win in November and serve the next 4 years?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator
yes.
Schumer. Do you expect, based on differences of opinion in the Democratic Party about the president, his ability to serve 4 years, that there might be a challenge at the convention? And if there is there the ability to throw out the virtual nomination?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator Murray, who just left, made a statement last night saying that she believes that Biden needs to do more to demonstrate that he's strong enough to defeat Donald Trump, articulate a vision, and must seriously consider the best way to preserve his legacy. Do you agree with her sentiment?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
We are now in the second week of public and semi-public discussions about the viability of the Biden-Harris campaign and whether the Democrats should be trying to find a way to replace Joe Biden as the Democratic presidential nominee. That is an entirely speculative conversation, which is to say it is entirely guesswork, because it is completely up to Joe Biden to decide whether he will remain the nominee. And if he does, according to the rules of the Democratic Convention, he will be nominated on the first ballot. President Biden says and said repeatedly he intends to remain the nominee. So that is the state of the news. Joe Biden is the nominee. But that has not been enough to stop those speculative guesswork conversations, and that's understandable. Some of the contributors to the public conversation, including members of the House of Representatives, both for and against Joe Biden remaining on the ticket, have made thoughtful and serious points worth considering. The White House press corps' contribution to the conversation has been mostly hysteria. As we saw yesterday, when some of the White House press corps sunk to a new low. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre responded to a New York Times story published yesterday saying that according to White House logs, a neurologist who is a specialist in Parkinson's disease visited the White House 8 times over 8 months. The story was written in a style to create a dark, ominous Parkinson's cloud over the White House. It was a completely accurate story as far as it went, but it was also a very badly reported story, as we will show you in a moment. Karine Jean-Pierre told the White House press corps that specialists, medical specialists, come to the White House for many reasons, including to treat the thousands of people, primarily military personnel, who use the White House medical unit, which is not reserved for the exclusive use of the president. So it is entirely possible for a specialist to visit the White House for reasons unrelated to the president. Karine Jean-Pierre explained all of that, that the president's annual physical does include an examination by specialists, including a neurologist. And so President Biden has seen a neurologist exactly 3 times in his term as president. Karine Jean-Pierre made that very clear yesterday. 3 times, not the 8 times in 8 months that the New York Times suggested was possible and maybe even likely in its reporting. Here is how some of that questioning about all of that went yesterday.
The president, I can tell you, has seen a neurologist 3 times, as it's connected to a physical that he gets every year that we provide to all of them.
It's a very basic, direct question.
Wait. Hold on. Wait a second.
8 times, or at least once, in regards to the president specifically.
Hold on a second.
That's what you should be able to answer by this point.
Wait, no. No, wait a minute. Ed, please. A little respect here, please. So every year, around the president's physical examination, he sees a neurologist. That's 3 times, right? So I am telling you that he has seen a neurologist 3 times while he has been in this presidency. That's what I'm saying. I am telling you that he has seen them 3 times. That is what I'm sharing with you, right? So every time he has a physical, he has had to see a neurologist. So that is answering that question.
No, it's not.
No, it is. It is. You're asking me. I also said to you, Ed, I also said to you, for security reasons, we cannot share names. We cannot share names.
You cannot others he would have met with. You can share names in regards to if someone came here in regards to the president.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names. There are security reasons. We have to protect.
It's public.
I understand that.
I hear you. Right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you. I cannot from here confirm any of that because we have to keep their privacy. I think they would appreciate that too. We have to give them.
The doctor.
We have to keep their privacy.
It is public information.
I hear you. Guys, hold on a second. There's no reason to go back and forth and be in this aggressive way.
Miffed around here about how information's been shared with the press corps around here.
What are you missed about? What are you missed about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
As you have seen, Ed is not very good at the respect thing. At least he wasn't yesterday. Let's just assume it was a bad day for him. But he is much worse at the apology thing. Today, when Karine Jean-Pierre returned to the podium, take a wild guess how many angry follow-up questions Ed had about the neurologist. 0. 0 questions and 0 apologies for the rage of yesterday. The rage of yesterday was gone, and the neurologist scandal was gone with it. Because, as anyone watching this program last night knows, just before 10 p.m. last night, the White House released a letter from President Biden's White House doctor. That letter proved that everything Karine Jean-Pierre said yesterday was true. And the letter added the name of the neurologist who visited the White House 8 times in 8 months, a name that Karine Jean-Pierre was not authorized to release yesterday. The letter said that the neurologist, quote, has held regular neurology clinics at the White House Medical Clinic in support of the thousands of active duty members assigned in support of White House operations. Many military personnel experience neurological issues related to their service, and Dr. Kennard regularly visits the White House Medical Unit as part of this general neurology practice. We value the contributions he has made across the many patients he has treated in support of the White House and its personnel over these years. Yes, military personnel have head injuries. Yes, military personnel need neurologists. Yes, military personnel use the White House Medical Unit. The letter also revealed that that same neurologist, quote, was the neurologist specialist that examined President Biden for each of his annual physicals. His findings have been made public each time I have released the results of the president's annual physical. President Biden has not seen a neurologist outside of his annual physical. The letter pointed out that the neurologist has been seeing patients at the White House for a dozen years. The New York Times has no idea how many times that same neurologist visited the White House during the Trump years because the Trump White House visitor logs were sealed off to the press. They were not public information. So yesterday's rage outburst in the White House press briefing room was only possible because the Biden White House restored the White House policy of making the visitor logs public. Today, NBC News reported that on most of the days that the neurologist visited the Biden White House, President Biden was not there. So if the New York Times would have done just the minimal amount of homework checking the president's travel schedule, they would have reported that the neurologist had visited the White House exactly 3 times when President Biden was there. 3 instead of the 8 times in 8 months report that the New York Times delivered and was breathlessly accepted by the White House press corps. That was easily available information to the New York Times, the president's travel schedule. And they did not bother to even think about it, look at it, or report it. Not one person working at the New York Times, from the publisher, editor on down to those reporters, not did it ever cross their minds. Where was President Biden on that day? Where was he in the world? Never crossed their minds. That is college newspaper standard that we're talking about here. President Biden wasn't there most of the time when the neurologist visited the White House. President's travel schedule is even more public than the White House visitor logs. You have the president's travel schedule, and the New York Times did not bother to check the president's travel schedule before suggesting to the world that a neurologist visited the White House 8 times in 8 months, presumably to treat patient Biden. That was a very bad piece of reporting by our best newspaper, which remains our best newspaper. And today, only one reporter in the White House press briefing room brought the subject up again and tried to blame yesterday's rage outbreak on Karine Jean-Pierre.
Can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no. Actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were